All right, so let's talk through the TechHunter's 1:8 second focal plane with a 34mm tube. Now, in some of the footage, you're going to see some B-roll here. This optic I mounted up on a Zastava OPAP 7.62 by 39. The reason I went with that is partially because I just love the gun and I haven't done a lot with it for a while. And secondly, because it has a pretty abusive recoil cycle. It is way, way overgassed. Even after all these years, that thing is going to just blow itself apart at some point. It's going to beat itself to death. I think I probably have 14,000 plus rounds through it. I kind of forgot, but I'm pretty sure it's at least 14,000. It's, about hand-sized targets, capable at this point at 100 yards. And then I did make some successive hits at 200 yards just fine on bigger sized targets. I had fun with it though, and I thought that would be a good host rifle to mount this up on just to see what the durability is like for this 1:8. Now, being that this is a second focal plane, I'm going to talk through a couple of the features here and just explain it to you. You need to keep in mind that the reticle trueness is not going to be there for any power except for 8 power. So if you're trying to stretch this out, which of course you're going to run it up to 8 power if you are stretching it out, those reticle subtensions are true on a second focal plane at max power. 8 power is where it's going to be true. The problem with some LPVOs is going to be that you can't see the reticle on 1 power, so that's why some people opt for a second focal plane like this one. The reticle stays the same size. The only trade-off there, and it's not really a downside, but a trade-off is that the reticle subtensions, the holdovers, are true at 8 power. That's just something to keep in mind. That being said, on a 10 or 12-inch target that I had down here, a little past 100 yards, even on 1 power, with that AK, that Zastava, not my most accurate rifle at all, I was still able to make pretty consistent hits as long as I was doing my part. All right, so of course the reticle is true on 8 power, but it's functional on 1 power because it's the second focal plane. If I'm doing transition drills between, let's say, 50 yards and 100 yards here, it shouldn't be too terribly off. Little off, but not terribly. So let's see if I can run this back and forth between 50 yards and 100 yards. I think I'll miss a lot, but that's all right. We'll see what I do. All right, so there's back-to-back 1 power at 50 yards, 8 power at 100, impacts on both. Let's try 1 power on both, see if I make hits. So I had a cleanup shot there just to show you that even on 1 power, if I'm switching between, I know the reticle is not technically true for those holdovers. It's still close enough to ring. I think it's a 10 or 12-inch plate or something like that at 100 yards with my least accurate rifle. It is not precise at all. It is terrible ammo that I'm shooting. Now let's try it on 8 power and see what happens. Field of view is decent. It's a big eye box. It's a big eyepiece. So that's going to help me a little bit, even though 8 times at 50 yards is very, very magnified. It's more than I would in a real world application. The trade-off there is not much. It's just more something you're going to want to pay attention to if you're actually shooting on paper, maybe shooting at animals, or you do have some extended range shots. At 100 yards, yeah, not much of a difference. You're still going to hit your targets. But if I want to do some target identification, I want to collect some information on what I'm looking at, whatever it is you're doing at distance, make sure it's on 8 power and not 7, not 6.5. 8 power, and those reticle subtensions will do just fine for you. I didn't find the reticle to shake loose. I didn't find the eye box or the eye relief to be problematic. Now this is a really big eye box and eye piece. The entire eye piece on this, the Ocular, is pretty large. One of the things I think they're trying to do with that is to achieve a less particular or less picky positioning for your eye So you have your eye relief, like the distance, and then you also have eye box, your comfort window. And I find that the comfort window on this for a budget optic is not bad on 8 power. We're talking max power. It does have ED glass that's going to help with optical resolution. It's going to help with detail. Being that's 34 millimeter, there is some decent light. You know, this is going to limit what can come into the optic. There's some decent light in there, and brightness was acceptable to me. That being said, it's pretty bright out today, so I think an evening time would be a great time to come back and follow up on that, see what it looks like in the future. But I found that the reticle contrast was decent. I didn't lose it on my targets, even some black targets out there. With the holdovers being bold enough in those reticle subtensions, it was, you know, it was able to be found against the target. And I could even see my impacts at 220 yards with this on 8 power. I could see on the white and then on the black where they were actually impacting. So no issues there. The actual footprint of the optic is not huge. It's not crazy heavy either. Obviously, a 34 millimeter is going to pack more internal elevation, maybe let more light through, and then depending on the setup, you might have some more weight on it. And so this one might be a little heavier than a 30 millimeter. If you're looking for ultralight stuff, look at some of TechHunter's other options in the 30 millimeter range, but the 34 millimeter does allow for more internal elevation. You have a reticle that allows for some holdover, but if you needed to, actually these turrets don't have a lot of backlash. There's a little bit, but there's not a lot of backlash. And listen to the audibility. That's not bad at all. And it does have a resettable zero. It's not a zero stop, but it's a resettable zero. So after I was done zeroing this at about 100 yards, I took the Allen, I lifted off the screw, and I set it back to 0 just in case I decide I want to be a little bit more particular. And for your click value on here, it's going to be half MOA. I like half MOA when it comes to LPVOs. One of the advantages of half MOA is it's a bigger graduation, it's a bigger correction at distance. And so since this isn't a precision rifle scope where I'm demanding that sort of expectation of reliability and consistency, I usually just need bigger gross adjustments. I'm shooting it on maybe calibers where the acceptable range for accuracy would be like 2 or 3 MOA. That's the size of targets I'm engaging at 2, 3, and 400 yards. So a half MOA click is going to keep me within my error window, and I'm still going to make impacts on those targets without a lot of trouble. I like that I have lots of internal elevation, and I like that I can hear and feel those clicks without much backlash. Backlash is like when there's like lots of extra play in the turrets. This doesn't have a lot of extra play, and there's also a nice knurling and texture all the way around, both windage and elevation. Zeroing was basically a breeze, partially because there was no zero stop to mess with. It was just a zero set, and then you have these cap turrets, low profile, so it's not going to stick up and obstruct your field of view. It's not a competition style optic for longer engagements in that way. It's more based in holdovers, a little bit sleeker design, probably good for some of that 2-gun stuff, maybe 3-gun stuff, and I would say probably a little bit of closer range hunting if you're looking for a lightweight, small, compact thing. You're hunting deer within 100 yards. You could throw this on a lever gun. You could throw it on an AR, of course. That's the footprint that fits best, or an AK. And I've just seen a lot of variability with LPVOs lately. This is something that could probably fit that. And of course, the driving factor for more people than not looking at this is going to be budget. This is a budget optic. And for the price point that they're asking right now, from what I've seen on Amazon, it's pretty realistic. Some of the advantages you get with this scope over others is going to be you can remove this throw lever. I like having a cattail on a scope like that can go quickly between 1 and 8 power, because 8 times is a big change. It's a big throw all the way across the scope. And if I'm going to be engaging on 1 power for close distances, things within, let's say, 25, 50 yards, then I want to go to 200 yards. Yeah, I want to be able to throw that to 8 power, and I want to do it quick. I don't want to have to grab the housing and try to monkey with it, especially in Minnesota. It's cold here, things seize up, but this seems like it's going to be able to move and actuate relatively smooth. I'm not too worried about that. Actually, the tolerances between these pieces feel pretty decent. It's not, there's no slop in this either. Maybe a little gritty, but no slop. So it's moving the way it should. The Ocular housing has your diopter adjustment on the exterior. This is technically a fast focus. It's very stiff. That's not a problem for me as long as it does what it's supposed to do and doesn't yank things loose in here or break anything. A stiff adjustment is no problem because I actually want it to stay put. I don't want it to come loose when I grab, like I have the scope cap covers, which it comes with. If I grab that and I move it or something, if it's too loose, those will move with it. And now my reticle sharpness is going to be in question, could be problematic. And so I actually prefer a really stiff ocular or a locking ocular when I can get it. And this focuses, you know, good enough for my eye, both directions. I didn't see any issues with that. I don't think you'll have any issues with it either. And one more time, just a shot of that. That's a huge eyepiece, a big piece of glass. So decent eye relief. It's probably somewhere around that 3.5 inches is what I saw. And then a relatively good field of view because of the optical design here. And I would say the eye box on top of that was fairly comfortable. And I was running it on a rifle that does have some decent recoil. That thing will move around, and I would notice if I was getting yanked out of the eye box too much, but it felt easy to get behind. Now, folks will ask about illumination, and I would say evening time is going to be when you're going to see the illumination, either on 1 power or 8 power, especially for 8 power. I saw contrast against different things. If I just look through it, I turn it on level 11 right now, I can definitely see a decent fiery dot in there. It's a large enough dot that it's going to contrast well, but in the evening time. I think in bright daylight, desert setting, or maybe wintertime setting here with snow, it's just so bright, it's going to get washed out. It's not going to contrast there, and that's okay. For a budget LPVO, for me, that's kind of expected. That's par for the course, and I think this one is doing just fine with that. Even having illumination at this price point is nice, and illumination that can work in the evening, most functional time, or when I'm running a flashlight. Yeah, that's not bad at all, and I'm appreciative that it's there. It runs on a standard 2032 battery, and so far it hasn't died on me, hasn't shaken loose, and I think the battery life is going to be probably comparable to other LPVOs. Now, one more time, I did want to mention, it comes with its own pair of rings. It's a single set, and this one has some decent hardware. I've used these multiple times. I've got several of the Hunters or TechHunter's style rings. I've had no issues with them. The only reason I didn't use this is I didn't demand the cantilever. I didn't need the height. And on top of that, I actually kind of wanted to keep this just slightly lower profile for my old AK here. But this would do fine as long as I had a cheek bump on that AK. On your ARs, this is going to be set up just perfect. The right amount of cantilever, the right amount of height. You'll be able to run this on your standard AR style rifles, flat top receiver style rifles with no issues. And it does hold zero. I've run this on multiple guns now, 308s included, didn't shake loose, and I have not had issues with hardware stripping as long as I stay within that 25 foot-pounds and then 25 inch-pounds and 65 inch-pounds on the actual torque to the rail. That is what's going to secure you and keep the product in good shape and not crush your optic or the image. You always want to be very careful about putting rings right next to that erector tube. But that being said, decent pair of rings, it comes with it, and that should be considered when you're looking at the price point of the optic, the expectations you have. This is getting thrown in. There's an added value there that a lot of companies are going to make you buy outside of this, like scope cap covers or rings, or maybe even not throwing in a battery and some of the tools. You don't have to worry about that. Pretty much everything you need to go is included in the box. You got your rings, you put your scope in, the manual tells you what to do with that reticle, how to zero, and you can get to the range and zero like I did in about 7 shots. That's all I have for you today, guys. If you like that video, you might be interested in some of the other Tech Hunter content that I've produced in the past. I'm going to go ahead and post some of those videos here. Feel free to watch one of those, like, share, subscribe, do the usuals, and comment down below, what would you put this on if it was on your rifle?